What's that? Yeah. All right, all right. Hello, everybody. My shirt's even coming out. My gosh. Uh, I think we have apparently 2 high school students are taking the lead here. Do we know who the 2 high school students are who are reporting back? Okay, maybe they're not in the room yet. I'm going to go hit the teachers up. I'll be right back. Okay, good day, everybody. We are in the first of 3 report backs. So folks are reporting back now on, we're going to start with the high school group, which has a pretty extensive report back, as you can see. Icy and Layla are going to do that. Why don't you all come up and have a seat now? Give them a round of applause for the high school students, all this work. Unbelievable. Now, the high school students get at least 10 minutes to report back. And then all the other group leads have reporters. They're going to get 3 minutes to report back on their findings. They're quite succinct findings, which is pretty amazing. We weren't sure. Doesn't have to be agreement at a Congress. There can be disagreement. And then we'll open up the floor to exploring what's shared. So basically, right, people are reporting out on what do we leave behind, what do we keep from each of these themes. Start exploring whether there's crossover between these themes, things that are common across these themes. Then this afternoon, you'll be talking about what's the future. Again, there'll be a report out, and these posters will be on the walls for you to look at, and maybe even put Post-its on note. I think it's a space for Post-its at the bottom. And then tomorrow, we'll be trying to explicitly make commonality across these questions. So we'll go from themes to the questions. Is there something that are there shared things that we should leave behind? Again, doesn't have to happen, but if it happens, it's powerful, right? We're thinking about like chapters of a book that we're writing in the next year after this, right? That we're going to say, these are the things we got to leave behind. These are the things we got to keep. These are the things we got to invent or build so that we have something ready when it's time for us to do our work, right? So that's the idea. We'll see if we get there. So this is the first of 3 report backs. There'll be time for interaction and time for choosing tomorrow. And then at the end of the sessions tomorrow, if we have 9 or 10 of those, we'll be telling stories about each of them in the report back. Good news, at least one national environmental organization is going to dial in and listen and just kind of hear like, oh, thank you, we're going to use this. Earth Day Network, where Professor Torres is chairman of the board, is trying to figure out how to use this for Earth Day 2026 as part of their community engagement across the US. And some folks, Mariama and others here, are going to take this back to the COP if we can get it together fast enough for that. So this is work we're doing here, and we're going to keep going. So with that, I want to turn it over to our high school students for 10 minutes of reporting back on the amazing work they did. Thank you. Oh, here's a mic.
Testing. Hi, my name is Isana O'Brien, but you guys can call me Icy for short. Don't mind how I look. I'm dressed up as the Nesquik bunny.
I'm Layla, and I'm dressed up as Angelina Ballerina.
And so in our workshop per se, we did first like a circle just to get to know each other, icebreakers, and then we broke up into 6 groups. And so our group was the wetlands and infrastructures, but there was stuff like invasive species, energy, carbon reservoir, climate learning and communication, and food and stuff. So I'm going to be talking about what we can do for Connecticut, and she's going to be talking about what we can do for New York, since we both go to different schools. And so Connecticut doesn't have much flooding per se. They just have, mainly the flooding is in the streets. And so to kind of deal with that, we talked about the wetlands and how we can use green areas and green spaces to fix that. And so we had said that Connecticut can build a separate underground system that instead of putting all the water in just sewage areas, it can filter out the rainwater from the trash and the chemicals, and it can be brought into different green spaces like wetlands, marshes, community gardens, and bioswales to then make sure it takes away from climate change and all that stuff, to make sure we have clean waters for those areas and also produce more green spaces for different biodiversity on land.
Okay, so New York, we have a combined sewage system. So that means that our rainwater and our stormwater all goes to the same place, and then it overflows, and then we're stuck traveling to school with water that's up to our knees. Hopefully no rats are in there, but um, so New York they started a program where they were planning on restoring green spaces. We say yay now until we realize when they're going to do it, and it's not going to take place until the 2050s. Unfortunately, they did start restoring some green spaces in Staten Island. What happened to the rest of New York? You know, we're here too. But oh, you guys think I'm funny? Ah. Oh, okay, yeah. So I think that New York really has to work on. We have a lot of buildings. Have a lot of buildings. A lot of the buildings that we have downtown are empty, and a lot of that space could be used to build green spaces. A lot of the schools in New York require students to take an environmental class. For example, I go to an environmental studies-based school, High School for Environmental Studies. Yay. And I feel like it's very beneficial when it comes to students my age learning more about the environment, and it kind of inspires a lot of students to take action. I feel like I feel like we have to do something about the amount of buildings that we have. We have these buildings, you walk past them, you look inside, there's nothing in it. Maybe a flickering light bulb, but like, what is it being used for? And that space could be used for different green spaces and to further research how we can better help our communities.
And we had also talked about making kind of using those green spaces and making like going back to the tunnels to making more tunnels to reach to other green spaces. So in case one ever gets ruined or damaged, knock on wood, that the animals can then travel to the other ones so that they don't have to go across the roads in New York. We had also talked about setting and expanding the ideas and plans to make it happen everywhere. So like she said, they had started making plans in Staten Island, but not the rest of New York. So actually taking those plans and setting them all across New York and maybe Connecticut instead of just Staten Island, while also making it accessible for those who maybe don't have enough money or can't help as much or want these areas around them, while also educating yourself and others. So maybe taking those classes and explaining to fellow students and your peers and your teachers or your parents or whoever to kind of educate them on these systems or just about environmental problems as well. And working with shelters and schools and recreation centers and parks to make sure each place has their own system. Thank you.
I feel like a bunch of schools, from my knowledge, have their own gardens. For example, my school, we have hydroponics, we have a bunch of different gardens, a bunch of different things growing. We have beekeepers club. We also have chicken tenders club. No chickens are being cooked. They're just being catered to. No chicken.
Like,
no,
and into the chickens.
no chickens were being cooked. Um, but yeah, I feel like a lot of schools thrive when students are not just talking about their environment that they live in, but they're actually putting in the work to better their environment. I feel like a lot of the times as youth, we're told that we can do certain things, but we're not given the access to do so. So it's very hard to kind of say, well, guys, your future is this, or in a couple of years, you have to vote, but you're not given the opportunities to be in the spaces that prepare you to do such things. Clock it. But, um, um, but yeah, I feel like based on my school and the people that I connected with today that I've just met, I noticed that we're all here for the same thing. And that's really to better our environment because we're all dealing. I'm not going to say that it's kind of a cause and effect. You're in these meetings and there's a certain group of people in there, right? And it's not a great representation of the people who these policies are affecting. So it kind of makes it harder. So as a student, we're here trying to better the environment. We're talking about how we want more green spaces and things of that sort. And I feel like collaborating with schools and local gardens kind of gives us that opportunity to do so. And it kind of strengthens our passion for advocacy. When we have support from adults, teachers, just seeing animals just like in parks and things of that sort, that kind of strengthens our drive, and it kind of gives us something to look forward to in a way. So yeah.
And to end us all, something that you can do to help is to advocate and to make sure like you're going to meetings or things that put these rules into place and putting your voice in and telling them, I want this to happen, or this is my idea, I need this to happen, so that we can better the earth and better our green spaces so that we don't have flooding in these areas. So my contribution, I run a wetlands clubs at my school, and I basically educate and tend to and clean to the wetlands that is at my school. And yeah, just advocate. And if you're able to get the ball rolling, if they're like, oh, but how are you going to get funding? Fundraise, do bake sales, do like a block party or whatever. Fundraise, advocate, use your voice. You have it, use your voice. You have that power. Thank you.
Another thing is don't take no for an answer. And if you are advocating for people who look like you or who are in your community, my greatest advice is honestly, don't care what people think or don't care who your message offends, because at the end of the day, it's your life and these decisions affect your life. And if it should make someone uncomfortable, because you should not be living with these conditions. So
With that being said, thank you so much.
Wow, that was incredible. Yeah, that was deep, amazing. And one more round of applause for the high schools. Woo! All right. They are sitting through this session with us, and then they are going on a tour of Yale's admissions tour at Yale. Hopefully we can get some of them to come up here. What's that? Hello. All right. All right. Well, it's not too much of a secret that these wealthier schools these days, like it's like 150,000 a year in annual family income, and you pretty much get a free ride at most of the wealthier private schools these days, like the Ivies. So don't let the financial aid thing keep you unless you're wealthy. Then you might have to think about it. But basically, if you're making even an average New York salary and you come from a family like that, you can get a pretty strong ride at these private schools. When I was at, anyway, A lot of people in public schools don't know that, and sometimes your parents don't know it. So let them know. Let them know. All right, thank you. So now we are going into the 4 theme report acts. Each of the theme leads, or one of the members of the theme group will report back, and then we'll have all those report back, and then open it up for discussion and questions as we go. So the first one is sustainable infrastructure, and Amy will come up and do that one first, and then followed by Mark Watson. Sustainable infrastructure. Wow, you all actually got to roughly 3 things each, and that's amazing. But yeah, amazing. So thanks. Go for it, Amy. Here's a mic.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would say let's all stand and stretch because we just ate. So let's do that. We
Yeah.
can stand and stretch a little bit. It's tight. All right. I have a dress on, so it's a little bit loose. All right. Say hi to the person next to you. And I think we're on time, right? All right.
Here, stand over here for a second. While you're doing that, this witch over here is our lead fellow for AI and environmental justice. Go to him and get a demo of our amazing AI tools, and also look at the schedule of AI webinars we have, which are not to teach you how to use AI, but how to kick dirty polluters' asses in the space of AI. So this is our man Axel right here. So yeah, go for it.
Great. So again, focusing on joy, right? Let's enjoy the hard work that needs to be done, right? So what we want to first start with is sustainable infrastructure. And before I read our points, I want to point out that we truly believe that some of the infrastructure changes will come about when we have these personal changes about our infrastructure. So these answers may not respond to AI directly or solutions to building infrastructure, but people make up buildings, right? People make the tech. So understanding that some of these are people-driven points. So first, what to leave behind? The ability to not hold people accountable, individuals and corporations. All right, so we want to leave that behind as we move forward. Working in silos. Someone said that the wheel's already been invented, so let's not try to reinvent it. Let's all work together, right? We can go further together versus alone. 3, leaving out the working class. We know that America as it stands, the place in which it stands, and much of what we know with capitalism has been built on the backs of those to get there, and we need to figure out how to reimagine the system with the working class. All right, so things that we want to leave behind is not leaving others behind, working in silos, and not holding people accountable. Now, moving forward, what we hope to move into the future with that is working. We truly believe that what we are dealing with is not a issue that is just in one location, but if we use this vision of the globe, right, looking at other countries, communities, and cultures as examples, that would help us continue to kind of forge the new imagination of our future. So looking at pre-existing solutions across the globe has worked, and we should use that to continue to work. 2, connecting technology with equity and community. We know that when we look at challenges such as just access and economy, we've created new economies with technology. So with that same speed of innovation, can we use that to also deal with equity and community? All right, so allow tech to be a part of that conversation. And then last, leaning on community knowledge, starting with people at the center of the solution or of the future. So knowing that we're not building things in tech offices, in one person's office, but really starting with the people we're trying to serve, work with at the center, and allowing that to guide us. All right. I talk about example with some of my students where if we're talking about cleaning the water, right, waste management, do we ask the people who we're working with how they view their water, how it should be cleaned, or we just jump in and put our hands in, right? Let's center the people first, right? Allow them to say what they are seeing, what they're envisioning, and then work with them to bring that vision to reality. So stop there. Thank you.
So we had a robust conversation around sustainable economics. We had 4 groups, so I was glad. Usually people run from economics, but here they run toward it, not away. So let's talk about what we're going to leave behind first, so we end on a good note. there were a lot of conversations around values being centered on profit maximization. And that showed up in terms of frames through which people make decisions like scarcity, exploitation, again, related to scarcity, and overconsumption. So that came up across almost all four of the groups. That's something we want to leave behind in terms of viewing economics. Lack of access to funding. And I think many people here, some of you may be entrepreneurs, know what that feels like. But basically, it's a club kind of mentality around getting access to capital. And that shows up in things that are a little esoteric, like fiduciary responsibility. If I'm on a board and I'm managing a fund and I narrowly define my responsibility to wealth preservation instead of impact on the community, that would be one of the ways that might show up. And maybe I don't try new things. Maybe I don't try to innovate. Maybe I don't care about community participation because I'm trying to hold on to this money in the way that I feel it should. We talked about redefining ROI, or return on investment. And right now that's principally determined. I went to Chicago and two older white men in the 30s came up with cap-in pricing models. I know that's a little off topic, but that was artificial. They made it up. Our whole financial system is based on some formula that people made up in the 30s. People were taking on risks centuries before 1930s. So we want to throw that out. And then finally, short-term vision. And I think most of us know, at least in the US and Eurocentric communities, often it's a very short-term investment phase. There are other communities, indigenous communities, that look at 7 generations, and African communities where there's a long vision. And we want to throw out this quarterly, profit-driven thing. So I'll go faster because I don't want to go over. What is working? On a good note, there are models about localism now around food systems and shared economies. And we want to keep that and we want to grow it. On the diversity side, this room is an example of that. There are a lot of different viewpoints that are now present in conversations that maybe weren't before. And we want to encourage that, whether it's corporate boardrooms, whether it's cooperatives, maybe it's activist groups, but we want to do more of that, not less. And that's been a plus for our economy. And then lastly, technical assistance. This is a big catch-all category, which is things that help. There are technical assistance and activist groups and innovation and creativity and storytelling that preserves values and transfers goals, and artists and all different pieces of our culture that support technically the community in order to support this economy. So that's my thumb talked about.
Brandon, and then David. All right, thanks.
Hello, everyone. Our group was a spiritual and mutual aid, and I'll just follow everybody's what to leave behind lead. First one, disconnection to land. And I think that's a key one to key in on, because it's, the lack of spirituality leads to the lack of connection to our land. And so if we are going to protect her, we need to think of her other than just a resource that we can just extract from. And so we have to build that foundation. We have to reconnect to that foundation. And that's what's going to lead to having a more healthy relationship with our lands, our waters. And that leads into extractive economies. So what are we extracting from? What we're extracting from is from a planet with finite resources. We don't understand that because we don't view our planet as something that is living, that is not, an everlasting gobstopper. Eventually, you suck the candy out and there's nothing left. And this is what we're living with today, the crisis that we face. And then finally, the scarcity mindset. I come from a culture that has absurd amounts of abundance on an island with finite resources. And the reason why we have that is because we cared about each other. And this system that we're in today, they want us to compete with each other. So it's collectivism over competition. And we got to leave these things behind, because all of our little things that we have, if we combine that, creates abundance. What is working for us? Indigenous knowledge systems. Our indigenous peoples have been here for thousands of years, and everybody in this room comes from an indigenous person or an indigenous lineage. The reason why you're in this room is because that system carried you here to today. And so it's the understandings that these indigenous knowledge systems aren't just a decoration that you sprinkle on top of your report. They should be the substance and what drives the decision makings we have. You know, we have to get in touch with the understanding of us to the environment, wherever you are, you know? And so that is what we got to keep. Art, music, and creativity. Like what people shared this morning, the joy that we have. And that joy is being lost because we're constantly feel like we're under attack, because they want us to feel like we're under attack, because they want us divided. They want us to feel fear. And so when we lean into the things that make us creative and the things that bring us joy, this is what will create the new ideas of the future. And finally, the third space, and I had to double check with Christina what the third space is. And the third space is a place where it's not somewhere where you can come in and you can buy your way in, or somewhere where you can transact with. It's a place that is free, a place that allows you to come in and to practice what you do and to see what you do and feel safe in these places. And so this all comes into tune with spiritual mutual aid. I think it's all part of, we should have spiritual and mutual aid be the resonances of all of these different things, you know, and we should carry it with us in our daily lives. But yeah, thank you.
That's the vice president of the nation of Hawaii, in case you were wondering. And our prior speaker was Mark Watson from Pot Liquor Capital, and Amy, who's a professor at Howard University. Those are some of our theme leads, by the way. And last but not least, David Cordero, who is an amazing attorney and PhD and works with Indigenous folks in Latin America.
Thank you. I want to call Karim, that was part of the group, to join us here. Thank you. One of the things that we were talking about this event is that we should start listening to our real voices, because we are a diverse community. So that's why voy a hablar en español y decirles que esta es mi voz. A veces no tenemos el conocimiento en otro idioma para decir todas las cosas que quisiéramos decir, y creo que es importante que, en mi caso hablo español, pero no hablo las lenguas indígenas de mi país, y es una deuda que yo tengo, y creo que es una deuda que todos tenemos, de empezar a escuchar a las personas en su propia voz. Así que voy a tratar de traducir un poco lo que nos va a decir Karim después de que ella hable, y resumirles un poco lo que hablamos en español. Así que, Karim.
Thank you. So the first thing that we
Okay, so yeah. What I say was basically that was my voice, my real voice in Spanish, that sometimes people that doesn't speak the language, for example, English, cannot express ourselves as with all the ideas that we want to share. And that is and even my language is Spanish. I do not speak the languages of the indigenous peoples of my country. So that is a death from me and from all the Spanish speakers in Ecuador. But I think it's a debt that everybody in the environmental movement has, that we got to start listening to the voices of the people. So that's why I'm gonna speak with my own voice in a second after Karine talks about what we talk in the group. I'm gonna translate it into Spanish. Yeah.
Thank you. So the first thing we talked about that is working is intergenerational spaces, and this conference is a great example of that. So seeing youth in these spaces, seeing elderly people in these spaces, and making sure that the community is involved in every step of the process so that as we move forward, we are a transformative change. So really building off of what Nina talked about this morning and putting that forward. The next thing we talked about was storytelling, and that is with data as communication of knowledge, but also through music and art, kind of echoing what we heard earlier today. By living in music and art, like this is a free space. And when we lose that, we become conquered. And then the last point is to meet people where they are at in their neighborhoods. There is a lot of fear right now around not having access to basic needs, and meeting people in those needs, showing up for each other, that care, that love and devotion, we must take with every step forward. And then what to leave behind. We've talked about profits over people today. Let's put that in the past. Coupled with laws of capitalism and extraction, and these top-down decisions by experts. We really want to elevate community voices, make sure they are part of a collaborative decision-making process in the production of knowledge and in its stewardship.
Así que de lo que hablamos en el grupo fue que debemos crear espacios intergeneracionales, que es muy importante compartir el conocimiento de las personas que han vivido más tiempo en esta tierra, pero también nutrirnos de toda la energía y toda la vitalidad que traen las nuevas generaciones. Creo que eso es algo importante. Tenemos que seguir construyendo la narrativa que viene además de los pueblos indígenas. Algo que se dijo en el grupo es: los pueblos indígenas están liderando el camino, y creo que es un mensaje muy poderoso, y creo que muchas de las personas que estamos aquí vamos a estar de acuerdo en eso. Y la narrativa de los pueblos indígenas es una forma de comunicar que nos parece que es muy útil y que va a hacer la diferencia. Tenemos que conocer a la gente. Aquí usamos la palabra neighborhood, but tiene que ser el lugar, ¿no es cierto? No solamente van a ser los barrios, también va a ser la selva, va a ser las zonas rurales. Tenemos que ir a donde la gente está y donde la gente tiene necesidades y está luchando por sus derechos. ¿Qué dejar atrás? Hablamos de dejar atrás la idea de las ganancias sobre las personas. Hablamos de las leyes del capitalismo. Una de las cosas que se discutió es que no vamos a cambiar la realidad utilizando los mismos mecanismos del capitalismo. Y esto es una crítica hacia muchas prácticas del sector de los non-profits que siguen en la lógica de la extracción y del capitalismo. Y finalmente, esto fue muy importante, hablar de que debemos deshacernos de la idea de los expertos, de centrar en la ciencia o las personas tal vez de las universidades que tienen esta voz de saber qué es lo que se tiene que hacer, y sentarnos en los debates con las personas, sobre todo de las comunidades y de los pueblos indígenas, exactamente dándole el mismo nivel, la misma voz a todas las personas que entran en esta conversación, y liberarnos de la palabra de los expertos va a ser una de las maneras. Entonces, eso fue lo que discutimos. Gracias.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful. Well, I can see the new government agencies already being formed, right? I mean, in Germany, you can't have a major corporation where a third of the board of directors isn't the workers. So that's about not leaving out the working class. There are, I know in France, they have technical assistance all the way down to the city level for sustainability. There's whole agencies that just make sure the community can be involved. So all of these ideas are things we can start turning into the way we want our world to work, and how to replace the things that or to be new with things that are already being destroyed as we speak. So we need to take this stuff seriously. And the next session is about what new stuff we're going to make too. So thank you, everybody. We have about I think we have about 10 minutes for just comments and from the floor, and then we'll have we have 10 minutes for comments from the floor, and then Christine, our Zen priest and important movement leader, former executive director of the Asian Pacific Environmental Network, will talk to us and launch us into thinking about the future. But maybe we have folks with microphones around. If you have comments or thoughts from one of your groups, or things you want to add, commonalities you're already seeing, let's take 10 minutes of just kind of floor debate or floor discussion, please. Microphones we have one person with mic. Can we get another person to help with mics? Can somebody volunteer to manage?
So, I don't know. So I'm curious, as we are in this sort of intergenerational space, it's a little bit of an academic space, and as someone who has grown up with her ceremonies and her ways, one of the things that is always really difficult for me to maybe code switch or translate to these green economy spaces is the importance of traditional ecological knowledge, especially as we're talking about ways of knowing and decision making towards sustainable infrastructure, and especially reminding people that we are nature and that that is what is sacred. How do you find yourself explaining to people the importance of sacred traditional ecological knowledge? What are terms you're using? How are you describing it?
Sorry, I was distracted a little bit with how to involve our online audience. Was that a question? Yeah. Okay, does someone from that group want to maybe take a shot at it? Okay, thanks.
I hear you, sister. That's one of our biggest issues back home, is how do we make indigenous knowledge systems not just performative, but actual governance structure. And it takes activism. It takes holding our politicians accountable to that. I know people talked about voting, but also, we need to be present in the room when these decisions are being made. And we need to also practice what we preach and show them by example what these things look like. And I come from a place where we had to retake lands physically. And so on these lands now, we didn't just utilize the land and got ours in and forget about everybody else, but we transformed our lands into something that people can now view as what the future would look like if you gave indigenous peoples back their lands and you got out of their way. What would that life look like? What would that system look like? And so it's through education, advocacy, but being active and always being present in the room to not just speak it to power, but then to also show them. Like I talk about a lot with my activist friends, like we can't be satisfied with telling these guys, no, they cannot develop. We have to show them the alternative. This is what we're gonna say yes to. We know what we can tell them no to, but we have to show them what we're gonna say yes to. And so we need to bring these knowledges and practice it today and show them what is the new bar that we're gonna set today. And this is what you guys gotta follow.
All right. Maybe Seon, and then we have a couple high school students after you, but go ahead. Okay, yeah. Or were you going to answer the question?
Oh, I'm gonna ask a question.
Ask a question, go ahead, yeah, go ahead.
I had a question for the high students. I know the response was a plan was given for 50 years. What do you think needs to happen for you to see change during your time as a young person? I think like people are planning for the future. What do you think needs to take?
Okay.
Get them a mic.
I'm back
Actually, ask-
again. So your question was, what do I think? Like, what do I want to see?
Oh, no, what needs to happen for the plans to happen, like, not 50 years later, but maybe 3 or 2?
People have to show up. Like,
Who
and-
specifically, what people?
people from the communities that are impacted by what's going on now. And I feel like another thing that I think needs to be acknowledged too is that I feel like the system was designed so that we have the power to make decisions and things of that sort, but people don't like voice their opinions and their concerns as much as they should. And I feel like people like us as people who like we say we want these changes to be made, we also have to give people the learning room to say, okay, well, now I want to learn. Because I feel like we say people make mistakes when it comes to policy making and things of that sort. And there are people that want to change, but I feel like the floor has to be more open to people wanting to teach about what's going on, the same way the floor should be open to people wanting to learn. So we can't say we want change. We can't say we want people to help out. And then when they want to help out, because of the past decisions that they have made, you're like, girl, you just did this. Now you want to help, or you can't reverse what you've done. But I feel like that's another thing too. And I feel like as far as youth, again, adults can't say, well, we want you to have a spot at the table when my spot at the table, there's not even a chair or a placemat for me. So I feel like that's something that needs to be worked on.
Actually, pass the mic to one of the high school students. 2 of you had your hands up, so go for it.
Second.
Okay. Hello?
Oh, I'm gonna cry. Okay. So, if you don't mind, could you repeat the question for me?
Sorry, your name? Layla had said that the plans for New York for sustainability was set for 50 years. And I said, what would it take for it to happen in 2 to 3 while you're still in this youthful state versus you waiting till you're a little bit older to see the change?
I think what needs to happen, well, first let me go back. The whole name of this event, I suppose, is Environmental Joy, Writing the Future. Earlier, when I was in the groups with all the other high school students, we were asked to give our own definition of environmental joy. And from what I had noticed there, the environmental joy that everyone had described was based on personal experiences, which is obviously not invalidating anyone else because that's their definition of it, and everybody else has a different definition. But to put it in a general term, I think the only way that we could truly see quick change happening in a short amount of time, making a large amount of progress, is if we get people who don't have that connection to the environment, for people who don't have a reason to care. The concept of environmental joy is this sense of pride and happiness, and I don't know how to say it aside from pride, but aside from that, it's this feeling that you get when you know that you've done something for the world that has had a positive impact on it, regardless of if it's for yourself, a friend, or a family. If you are able to put your care, your love, your time, your effort into something that doesn't directly affect you and still get that sense of environmental joy, that is what's going to drive people to want to make change. When they realize that feeling they get when they make proper change in the world, that is what's going to drive it, because we have the answer to so many different things. We know, in retrospect, we know how to solve climate change. We have each and every step laid out perfectly for us. And the reason that we don't do it is a lack of environmental joy. Because what am I getting out of it? You know, things look pretty. That's great. But you need to be able to find something deeper than the face value of it, to feel for things that don't directly affect you, to have sympathy, empathy, human emotions. That is where environmental joy stems from. And that is what it's going to take to make a large amount of change in a short amount of time. Thank you. Thank you.
Let's take the question. There was a question next to you. Go for it. Wow. What's your name again?
My name's Eva Montañez.
Nice. Thank you so much. That was so powerful.
Thank you.
All right. Hello. Yep. All right. Cool. This question, I might need a little more time to bake, but this is towards the spiritual and cultural aid, because I think a lot of what you said connects to what I love researching. So, when it comes to particularly the injustices committed by the Western Hemisphere towards indigenous communities, how do you exactly attempt to, like, what do you think is the best strategy to bring back the cultural heritage? Because I know, for example, in Hawaii, one species bird, which is now named the kiwikiu, lost its indigenous name. It was regained in 2012 or 2014. And don't you think, and also another question is, do you think that indigenous communities should hold even more responsibility to protect wildlife, even more so than the current federal government? Because especially in recent years, we can see what has occurred in Papua New Guinea, what we've seen in Australia, where so many species that have been lost to Western science. When you allow indigenous communities to aid in Western science, usually these species are found, and usually these habitats are protected even better, because usually these species are found near indigenous jurisdiction. So yeah, that's kind of my question. Like, do you think indigenous communities should hold more responsibility than our current federal government when it comes to the protection of our species in order to maintain the culture and restore the culture to the people?
Oh.
Thank you. Good question. Yes, we should. We need to be in the room. Like I said, we need to lead, and we need to show the example of what it looks like and what it feels like. You know, we had an incident maybe about 5 years ago. We had a giant oil spill in one of our aquifers from the U.S. military. It was an underground tank. It was Red Hill, and it spilled what they counted about 40,000 gallons of oil directly into our one aquifer on our island. And it affected, and coincidentally, this aquifer fed directly to military families. So it was the military's problem that they created for their own families, and yet they overlooked that this was happening. And the Hawaiian people have been fighting against this oil tank being there for generations, but it was only us fighting it. And because they didn't listen, the military families got hurt by that. And so we have to make indigenous issues and indigenous things that we fight for everybody's issue. Because we're not just doing it for ourselves. We share the planet together with everybody else. The knowledges that we hold are the keys to how we're going to get through this climate change that we see today. And so they not only have to be just in the room, or, you know, we take bits and pieces that we think fit, but we actually have to be in a lead position, like baked in to even the law. And so the only way that's possible is we have to be in rooms with people like you folks, so that we can build coalitions that help put us into these places. But we have to be present in all places. This is why I came all the way from Hawaii to be here. Because when they asked me to speak here, I didn't want somebody with some ancestral knowledge about Hawaii to be here. I wanted to be here so that you can hear it from our voices that we need to be here.
All right. Okay, but we have time for two more questions. Phil, and then over there. Oh, okay, three. So, Shun, Phil, and then over there, if you could get.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Same topic. So I'm Danae, Yate Shie Jalen Yenabagov, and I also am agreeing that our indigenous knowledge needs to come back into the land. We are the land is us. So it's not a separation for us, it's the continuation of us. So when you take our land and murder and rape it, you are also murdering or raping our people. There's not a division for us. We are in unity with one. In my culture, when a baby is born, they bury the umbilical cord into the land so that they are always a part of the land and they know where to come home. And I think it's important for us to be here, but I also think we need to talk about the structures of the Indigenous people and the people to the lower states and Alaska and Hawaii. In the Constitution, we are still labeled as merciless Indian savages. We are labeled as other. We do not have a seat at the table. And so I think we have to look at the structure of the United States to reconsider and reevaluate who we are and what we are. We are the original land keepers and the holders. Our Indigenous knowledge was eradicated from us, and now we're using terms such as sustainability. When if we hadn't taken and colonized and murdered my people, we wouldn't be in the place we are right now. We're using titles such as public lands. This is not public lands, this is stolen land. And so I think we need to look at and start at the very beginning of how erasure happened on our lands and what we need to do to heal the land and heal my people and our people. We can talk about sustainability, we can talk about all this all day long, but in the end, we need to look at the history of the United States of America and reconcile the fucked up shit that happened to our people.
Woo!
Then
Yeah.
we can come together and we can heal her together.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to say I started with a quote from James Baldwin. I think it's safe to say one of his greatest insights was the damage to all of us that the way we've treated some of us has wrought, right? That slavery, that genocide. We have the most brutal economy in the world because we got used to brutalizing our Indigenous people and our slaves, and everybody in this economy suffers from it, not just those folks. So there's bridge building to be done also with that healing. Thank you so much, Son.
Sorry, very quickly. What I wanted to build up on one Brandon said, and it touches the questions that you've asked. And I think what we have to remember is that we're all connected, right? And we talk about Indigenous knowledge systems. Another term that we use is earth-based systems, right? There are two worlds. There's the spirit world, that's the natural world. We are conduits that go between one and the other, right? And the two words I want to sort of keep with us. I see my brother there. I've never met him before, but once I saw his outfit, I'm from Lagos, Nigeria. Once I saw his outfit, I knew he was my brother, right? And the reason I point that out is because yes, just by looking at him, I know, but also we share a culture. But if you look at the principles of our culture, it's not that different from Brandon's. It's not that different from yours. They're all earth-based. Ifa is our root, right? We are Yoruba, and Ifa literally translates into wisdom in nature, right? And so if you start to take the learnings from that, and what Ifa says also is that we stand on the shoulders of our ancestors, those that came before us, and they came before us to look after the land. And then when they left, they went back to the spirit world. We came, and we believe in a circular system. So those who have come, look after the land. Those who have left will come back and continue to look after the land, right? And the one thing that our cultures teach us is consciousness, which has been taken away because a lot of our cultures are oral based. Information is passed orally through generations, customs, systems, right? Your grandmother telling you a story is not just a story. She's feeding with decades, centuries of knowledge that we have a responsibility to pass down, right? And so what's happened is, whatever you want to call it, the modernist system, capitalist system, whatever it is, it's less than 200 years old, right? We come from culture systems that are centuries old, but they have been transferred orally and been flattened, erased, dehumanized, whatever you want to call it, and replaced with a scribed construct that is less than 200 years old. So we have a responsibility to start to preserve, document, and transfer those knowledge systems, because we have to create a canon that is an alternative to the Western programming that we have today, which is simply rooted in a sort of Darwinian system of thought, survival of the fittest, right? Holding the few to support the few at the expense of the many. But the many, what we found out, what we are doing is we are sort of adopting that narrative where we are on the back foot, where we are on the defensive, and we are being distracted by social media or by the violence that's happened to us. And there's a space for us to now tap into the consciousness of our parent cultures and leverage on that and document those systems and start to transfer them to the new generations, which has been done already by listening to some of the ladies that went up here. So I just wanted to say that to encourage the lady Dan to answer your question and to buttress what Brandon was saying, which was much of what we picked up in spiritual and mutual aid. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. That's Son Oduwale, who's an architect. He doesn't just have ideas, he builds stuff with ancestral knowledge. So that's one of our theme leads. And last word for this session to another one of our theme leads, Dr. Phil Thompson, professor at MIT, former deputy mayor of New York City, and lots of other stuff.
Thanks.
Go for it.
This last conversation was so powerful. I wasn't going to react to that. Some of us had our ancestry wiped out. We don't know what country we came from. We have no land to claim because we were removed from land. And so our narrative will not be reclaiming land that we know where it is or reclaiming our ancestral language because we don't know what it is. It will be a different narrative, but I think the cloth of justice will be woven from many threads. And I think that's what our work will be, to talk about our threads and to weave it together into a more powerful whole. And so that's what I'm getting out of this. Yeah. And I appreciate that. But what I wanted to talk about was to say what it's like from when you're sitting in government and people are demanding accountability. And what I wanted to say about that is a majority of legislators don't know how to write a piece of legislation. Most of the legislation is written by professional lobbyists who come to the elected officials with the legislation written. In a city government, when you come and you demand something, most governments are understaffed. And so you've heard the term, the squeakiest wheel gets the grease. That's because if you have limited staff and you have to choose who you're going to try and figure out a solution for with limited staff, you go to where you think your biggest problem is. And everyone else just doesn't get dealt with. However, when corporations come to government, they don't come with a demand model where they just come make demands and then leave. They actually give you a full-blown proposal with the numbers worked out, with pie charts, with everything you got to worry about, they've thought through, and they give you a proposal and they make it really easy. All you have to do is say yes, right? What I'm going to suggest is that we begin to not just think about our relationship to government as holding them accountable, but more co-governance, co-production, and one of the great values of being here at Yale is they have a law school here, they have a forestry school here. They put that together with what you folks know, what community folks know, to come up with your own fully blown out proposals with the numbers, the charts, the this, the that. So your government officials, you can say, we can do this together. All you have to do is say yes.
We're gonna end this session on that. I don't think we have a report back this evening, but tomorrow morning there will be more of this as well. This is exactly, whenever we do anything at the center, we're like, why Yale? Right? Like, and there are people here who know how to write laws. That doesn't mean we know how to design them or how to do them right, but there are people who, and that question of, so this exercise is meant to create the prompts, right? And tomorrow, particularly, we'll go through a process that helps take it to the next step. Not all the way there, but really to put this out as a discussion guide. Unfortunately, we have a couple years before we can start getting laws out there to get other people to say yes to, but that moment and that time will come. And this process is meant to feed tomorrow at the full report back. We've got a couple of national organizations also with strong technical skills who will be listening in. The head of the Natural Resources Defense Council, Manish Bapna, perhaps the head of Green Latinos, and others will dial in just to listen. And Earth Day, as I mentioned earlier, is interested. So this is a generative process to take this stuff into action. What do we got to stop? How do we make a proposal to stop it? What do we keep and grow? And the next session we're about to go into is what are we building for the future? So thank you for that, Phil. That's very real. We have to make this stuff, right? Thank you. All right. With that, I'm going to hand it over to help launch us into the future. The amazing Zen priest, community leader, movement strategist, and one of the keynotes from our first Environmental Joy Conference, not a Congress then, now a Congress, Christine Cordero.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes.
All right. Hi, everybody. Is anybody else's heart racing? Yeah. We've just heard some soul spirit stirring words. So if you don't all mind to do this, I love to do this. One of my favorite words is conspire, and it means to breathe together. And we're always breathing together, but to breathe together intentionally. So if you're with me, I'm just going to do a simple one. We're going to breathe in for 2, and then we're going to breathe out for 4. Yeah? Here we go. Ready? Breathe in 1, 2, and breathe out 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, breathe in 1, 2, breathe out 1, 2, 3, 4. So when we are around each other, and we should be stirred by each other, I've been loving all of this. I just want to acknowledge, so we're about to go into a session called What's the Future? And I want to acknowledge that we are not working off of a blank slate that is easy. Yeah? That we just opened up. We just saw each other's pockets of grief, of deep love for our people, and our vulnerability. And that's a beautiful place to start. But it's big. But as one of my former therapists used to say, or her grandpa Chet, he used to say, sweetheart, you got to name it to tame it. And so one of the things I want to name about what we're about to do is that there are actually peoples whose whole job is a futurist. Yeah. It's a muscle, actually, we built. So I used to be at an organization called Center for Story-Based Strategy. I used to run it, over a decade ago. And so this is when we would get into hundreds of rooms, work with hundreds of organizations, thousands of people, and we'd be like, what's the story we want to tell about our community? I used to joke around that we were like the Mad Men for social justice. Like we're trying to make social justice sexy and irresistible, right? Because unless people can feel it, taste it, touch it, it's very hard to get them to act on it. And one of the things we used to say is any good story has good foreshadowing, because one of the adages around communications and media is people often do not go in real life where they first don't go in their minds. People don't go in real life where they don't first go in their minds. And so to what Brandon was saying, to what a couple of relatives were saying earlier, is if all we're saying is, no, don't go there, no, don't go there, then that begs the question, where are we going? Right? And that's part of our call in this conference, is to do that. And, so we're about to practice our radical imagination. And I like to say it's a muscle. And I think hope and radical imagination I'm into sports, I play music, I love to be in my body. And like anything that you learn, you kind of got to practice, you got to get your reps in. you know? And so over those 7 years, we used to work with adults who had forgotten who they were as kids. You ever work with kids and you ask them to dream up something and they've got 100 ideas within 5 minutes? You get into a room of adults and you're like, what do you want the story to be of our people? And it's like, I don't know, right? Or in the worst of cases, I would walk into rooms and somebody would be like, my grief is too big. The story right now is too much. And I can't dream into the future because I can't even think past next week. Right? So again, this is a muscle we have to build. And we're going to try something right now. And this is the thing about muscles and working out. And one of our, there's many sayings from a sister org I deeply love, Movement Generation. And they say, what the hands do, the heart learns. And generally what is true in the body is just true. So we're going to try something right now. This is an exercise with ourselves. And how do I do this without 3 hands? Okay. All right. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to make a circle with one hand, and then your other hand is going to be like a hook. Thank you, brother. Okay, then your other hand is going to be like a hook. And then this first time, so you're going to put the little hook in the circle, right? And what you're going to try to do is break your own circle, okay? That's going to be the exercise. But for the first round, what I want you to do is you're going to breathe in as you break the circle. So you're going to, ready? On 3, 1, 2, 3, breathe in. Pretty easy to go through, right? Okay, now try this. On the next time after 3, you're going to breathe out and exhale long and then try to open the circle. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Harder. Yeah? Did you feel that? If you breathe out, you're stronger. So muscles are like this. In extension, we're stronger. You do this in anything in sports. When you hit a ball in volleyball or whatever, you exhale, you extend, you're stronger that way. So often what they're trying to do is make us clutch to what we have. When you're in a contracted position, you're smaller, you're tinier, and you're not as powerful. And so when we think about how do we extend into our full power, it's both a metaphor and not a metaphor. So for folks that know how to use their bodies, like this is something you'll know. So this is why any meditation practice across the globe, the exhale, that's the part where you apply power. Yeah, and there's a reason why, because it's true in the body, it's true out in nature. And the stuff we're doing is hard, y'all. Stretching ourselves is hard. So my most recent job that Michael was talking about was at Asian Pacific Environmental Network. And if you don't know APEN, they're a statewide environmental justice organization in California. I'm still part of the we. And I grew up in Contra Costa County, which has 4 of the 5 refineries in Northern California. And fossil fuels are killing our planet. And we know that we're not going to transition out of that unless we transition those 5 refineries. We provide gasoline and oil for the whole Northern California and Northern Nevada area. And so I'm in this campaign, right? And we're like, how do we close down these refineries? So our community members, our Laotian immigrant refugees, all the Black and brown folks outside the Richmond refinery are like, close that stuff yesterday. Meanwhile, the steel workers and the workers inside are like, this is our family's livelihood for multiple generations. So one time I went to breakfast with the head of the local union of the steelworkers. I'm going to channel him because it's, so we had breakfast and we were like, okay, we can't believe it. Nobody's done this in the whole country. We're trying to look around, we're like, somebody's done this, right? Somebody's trying to figure out how we close these refineries responsibly so that communities and workers can actually be left with something good at the end. And it was like, no, there's actually only examples of that being bad, whether it's a plant or a military base. Maybe there might be 1 or 2 that are in progress right now for coal. And so Tracy and I were like, I can't believe nobody's done this. And it's like, man, I think it's us. I think we're supposed to figure this out. And if you know historically, all our environmental work, labor and environmental justice activists don't usually get along. We used to have this joke that some of our trade brothers and sisters are happy to build the Death Star as long as they have a job. And part of what I had to do was be like, oh, this other person is not Darth Vader, right? Like, who is this? And so we sat down to lunch, him and I, and actually it was brunch. I remember there being pancakes. And we're sitting across from each other. And he's like a classic union guy. He's like a big white dude with like the ZZ Top beard. I'm telling you, I could have taken Tracy out of a movie. And he's amazing. And he's this grounded person. We were talking to each other. And over the course of brunch, we realized, we had this moment where Tracy had just lost his son to suicide because the plant that he worked at had just been conditioned to biofuels, which even we didn't like, and hundreds of workers lost their jobs like overnight. At the same time, a couple of months before that brunch, my aunt, who lives in Richmond, had just had a double mastectomy. Right? So we're sitting across from each other and we're like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this together? And we both looked at each other and I was like, well, they haven't figured out in the past, but what we do know is this is about stretching into each other's perspective, right? So I don't go into a room without thinking about Tracy's son. And I don't think he goes into a room without thinking about my aunt. So in that exchange, there's a fundamental stretch we both did, extension, that was deeply uncomfortable. This conference is not called environmental comfort. It's not called environmental pleasantry. It's called environmental joy. The flip side of joy is sorrow. We must know both to know the true extent of either. And so as we practice our muscles into the future, right, we're extending. And so we do this exercise, and I tell folks to do that exercise because part of it's going to feel uncomfortable for some of us to try to dream into the future. But what you have to remember is that there are scales of action that make an impact that you have no idea what will be the consequences of, right? And Tracy and I, when we were like, oh my gosh, we don't feel ready for this, but we're who we've got. And we said, well, they're not going to figure it out without us. And so I guess we have to go in and do this. And I am happy to say that before I transition out of my role at that organization, we have the first blueprint of what it means to transition refineries with workers and communities at the center. We laid out a roadmap, yeah. And no lie, we sat in a room for 3 days and we're like, what's our common ground? And we found, I think, like 21 policies that we said, if the county and the cities and the state can do this, then we're on the way. And the answers were there in the room between us, but we actually I had to explain to them why environmental justice communities don't like community benefit agreements. They thought they were the best things. And I was like, no, by the time we're in the room, CBAs are crap. And they were like, what? And I was like, yeah, you know when you go into contract and you have nothing to negotiate with, that's how it is for us with CBAs. Then they're just telling us, how do you want to die? And they were like, and I was like, really? And it was wild to be like, we talk very different language. We know very different realities, but the minute we said it, they got it, right? So we are going to be in practice of building our radical imagination and practicing it, and we're practicing being ready when the time comes. And we're going to look around, and you're going to be like, anybody doing this? Guess what? It's us, right? So we're going to close. I'm going to close here with a readiness practice, if you all are okay with doing this. I'm a big, I don't know, we're human animals. We're this, not this. When I said mind earlier, we're going to use our mind in the lineage I come from in Zen. Mind, kokoro, shin kokoro, actually refers to everything from here all the way to here. So when we're in the next session, you're going to be using your full mind. Okay? All right, so here's how to do, we're going to do a readiness practice. So everybody's in chairs primarily. You can do this standing as well. Go ahead and get your feet about hip distance width apart. If you're on a chair, I encourage you to get to the edge of the chair and make sure you can feel every single toe on the ground. And you're going to sit up, actually. You're going to sit up. I want you to sit up into your full length. You can stand or you can stay seated. And you can rest your hands right on your legs. And this is an open eye practice. So you're going to keep your eyes open. And what I want you to do is I want you to stare onto the horizon line as if you're looking at a distant mountain. And that mountain is where we're trying to get to. And all the people around us are who we're taking with us. And we want to get there together. Yeah, so you're sitting here, you're sitting up nice, big, and tall, press into the top of your head. Nice and tall. And then when you have that length, go ahead and relax your body. You can keep your eyes open and see, this is kind of fun. You can kind of play around with this. You're going to see if you can see all the way to your peripheral vision, all the way to the left, all the way to the right, up and down. You can see this beautiful building ceiling even without necessarily moving your eyes. But look at how much you can see. You don't have to do anything with it. You're just looking. Then go ahead and pay attention to what you can hear. My voice. Earlier there was a phone ring. Maybe the hum of mechanics is usually somewhere in the room, electronics. We're just going to keep our eyes open. And here's what we're going to do. In a moment, I'm not even going to tell you when, I'm going to stand up. And you all are going to stand with me. But as we're sitting here, we're going to keep our senses open. We're looking at our goal and the horizon line of where we want to reach. And then when you start to see me move and you start to feel other people move, we're going to get up together. Okay? So just go ahead and breathe. Get your normal breathing. If you're starting to feel tense, go ahead and shake it out. Yep. And for those of us that are standing, you can do an extra motion. You can like put your arms up or something, but we're just going to stand up together. Those of us who are sitting. Oh, that was practice run, practice run. All right. Back down, back down. Sit back down. And even if there are distractions in the room, let them be. People will say stuff, people will make noises. That's okay. Now keep your senses open, get ready for when I do it again, okay? Yes. Down, one more time. Okay, stay relaxed, breathe. You feel that? Alert, relaxed, paying attention to one another. The next time we go up, we're going to our groups. All right, y'all, let's roll.
Sorry. There's some direction, I think, on the walls as to where you should go, but the spiritual mutual aid is going to the big Bowers room. Bennett, can you, were you in Sage? Were you in the Sage building? You were in spiritual mutual aid? Say, okay, you're in that. No, you're, let me check with Bennett. Bennett, do we have the room number? Sorry. Oh, okay. Okay. No. Yes, that's right. So the ways of knowing and ways of decision making is in this room. Sustainable economics is in G01, the ground floor of this building. Spiritual and mutual aid is in Bowers Auditorium, which is in the same building, but it's that bigger room that you saw on your way in. It's that big auditorium that's on that next to the piano. What? It's in Sage, Bowers, right? And then sustainable infrastructure is in room 24, Sage Hall. All right. All right, good. Sustainable infrastructure, room 74. It's Sage Hall is the brown building to the right as you walk out the front door. It's the brown building right next door here. Up the hill, the brown building right up the hill is Sage. What's the future?
Yeah, so it is building on. Great, yeah. All right, thank you. Just taking a photo.
Oh, okay. Oh, this. All right.
The dots. You have more. They go in first floor.